Awesome. Awesome. All right. I think we're going to get Doug on in just a second. It always happens. We log on in areas. And for some reason, it always happens. I think that's like a glitch in the matrix. And Raul's probably going to be joining us here in a little bit. But we wanted to kind of kick it off and didn't want to keep anybody waiting. And so we want to get into it. For those of us joining us for the first time, or you just heard about it, or somebody dropped you a line and said, hey, check this out. I'm Chris, and this is Doug. Raul will be jumping on shortly. And today's topic is like super important. We go over topics weekly on like what we're going to do and what we're going to talk about. And usually it's dependent on what like kind of happens throughout, the course of the year or the month, or if something's kind of popped up on the national kind of stage that we'll address it from our vantage point. We're not the be all end all, but we're talking, we're the boots on the ground for the most part. And sometimes we just like to give our take on how things are kind of going. And one of the biggest things when we first started talking about this, because both myself, Doug, and Raul, we work over at After Action, and our primary goal is to make sure that if there's a first responder or his or her family member that's in crisis with either mental health or substance issues, that we have resources available for them, and a spectrum of resources, not just one thing. And I, along with Doug and Raul, because we've worked in this industry for years and years and years, and my work as a director of a peer program at a first responder agency, I sought out these types of resources. So when I came to work here, primarily because of the program, and not just that it's a program. And I say this all the time. You look at brochures and different things of like different programs, and I equate it to this: that if anybody's ever like looked online and seen a picture of a hotel that you're going to go stay at, you're like, wow, that's really good. And then you get there, and then there's like, there's dope deals going on outside. The room doesn't look anything like it looks, and it's just nasty, or it just misrepresented itself. So I'm always skeptical of treatment programs. So I actually came to this one and kind of did like my own like little undercover thing, and I was so amazed and pleasantly surprised. So when we're talking about that, and both myself and Doug have both been in treatment programs as patients, right? So we know what it's like to be on both sides, what it's like to be in a good one or kind of not a good one or mediocre, and also being on the other side where we're helping first responders and their families get the help that they need. So there's I mean, an hour on this is not enough. You need like 4 weeks just to kind of bridge the surface, but we're going to try to consolidate a bunch of stuff. So we decided to title it, What Makes a First Responder Program Credible? And I think more than just credible, what makes a first responder program, yes, credible, but also good, like effective. So there's a couple things. So when I look at a program, I look at it from different vantage points. So as somebody in crisis, I look at a program that understands who I am in the broad sense of the term as a first responder. What discipline am I in? Am I fire? Am I EMS? Am I dispatch? Am I law enforcement? Am I corrections? I mean, there's a great divide just even between the road deputies or working the street as a police officer and working in a facility as in a correctional status or environment. And even the correctional environments vary from the type of correctional facility it is, the people who are in it, ages, from juveniles all the way up to, semi-secure facilities or max facilities, maximum security facilities. So there's this wide range of what first responders are, and I include corrections in that as well, as far as and also dispatch and forensics, because we're seeing a big. When I first started, wasn't a lot of civilian forensics, but now there's like a good mix shifting over a little bit towards civilian, but also to include like victim advocates that work within agencies. So if there's a nexus to law enforcement or first responder in general. That's kind of what I look at. So when we come down to it, and and I'll Doug like chime in because Doug's had the experience, set a real shitty experience that actually I think wound up turning out a little bit good for Doug because he got to see what the bad is. But also, you made pretty good relationships from that. But the number one thing is trust. Trust. That's comes down to it. Just the trust, understanding the culture, and first responders are generally, and again, I'll speak in generalistic kind of terms. We're suspicious and suspect of everybody. Everybody has a hidden agenda or a secondary meaning to what he or she is doing. Um, and ultimately what the outcome is. So when I look at it from different perspectives, I look at it from like me going in as somebody who needed help, right? Then I look at it as somebody from this point where I want to transition that individual from where he or she is into the facility in the best possible way. Sorry, my dog's decided that his feet needed to be licked excessively. Pretty sad. But I also look at it from the leadership or an executive level side. Why? What is the reasoning for getting somebody that works in my organization help? Is it because they need it, which I think that should be a primary, but I'm not naive to the fact that they also need to look at how does this benefit the agency? Myself, along with a couple friends, did a presentation at the FBI National Academy uh, entitled "The Cost of Not Helping." So, looking at it fiscally, like what is not helping look like financially for an agency? You know, generating more lawsuits because of conduct, or creating toxic environments because one person that's not getting the help will kind of infect the people that he or she works with. So that kind of drops the morale. Also, loss of productivity. All these kind of different things factor in. And what we found out was the cost of helping is so much smaller than it is in the cost of addressing when you don't help. The other thing is you're getting a much healthier environment. You're getting a better interactions with the community. And interestingly enough, I spoke at a couple. I spoke at the Presidio, at the Anti-Violence Reduction or Violence Reduction Network, I think, symposium, and then another one in Arkansas. And somebody asked me a question. They're like, well, how do we reduce the violence between our first responders and the community? And it was a little bit more geared towards like our law enforcement side of the house. But regardless, right? Um, I said, it seems like a simple question. A healthy operator or a healthy first responder is going to interact with the community in a much more healthy way. So if that's the goal, the upper echelon has the goal of, all right, let's take care of our people. That should be primary, but let's take care of our people and also take care of our agency. And let's see how that works together. Like how to, it's almost like makes it exponentially better for everybody. But when we're talking about, you know, what it is to have or what makes a first responder program credible, it's a myriad of things. And this whole arena has shifted, and in slow increments, so to speak, right? So a lot of times we're dealing with whether substance issues or mental health. Um, I look for agencies that can handle both. And I'll throw it to you guys. Most of it, and this is my experience, right? Most of the places that I come in contact with up till recently have been primarily, in order to go to a treatment facility or a residential program, you had to have a primary substance issue, which kind of limits it because I do come across a good number of first responders and their family members that don't struggle with any substance issues, but because of the job, because of their upbringing and all the stuff that goes into that, are just solely dealing with some mental health issues or dealing with some disorders or co-occurring type of mental health issues. So going to, and I'll throw it to Doug, going to a facility, right, or a treatment program when you don't have substance issues, but you're in tandem, or it's kind of like treatment by the lowest common denominator. You're in there with other folks that are struggling with substance issues on top of mental health. And think I've ever come across anybody that was strictly substance issues and no mental health. Usually it's substance as a result of mental health issues. So they're dealing with one extra component. But Doug, what is it like to go to a place with no substance issues and everybody in there is either a heroin addict or a fall down drunk?
Yeah, it's to say the least, it's pretty difficult. But in my situation, it worked out. So I went to a first responder facility, um, treatment center, and I had no substance, no alcohol, no substance abuse. And I get there and I walk into the room on my first day, and there's 30 heroin addicts. It facilitated 30 people. It was full, and they were all addicted to heroin. And so it was a odd dynamic. I was the only cop in a first responder facility. I didn't know that being arrested by the cops made you eligible to be in a first responder facility. But what I learned in that place was that all the people in there, as they were telling their stories about their addiction was from traumatic events, rough childhoods, all the way to abusive marriages, to family laws, myriad of excuses. But that's what I learned when I was in there, that their issue was no different than mine. They just chose drugs and alcohol to deal with the problem, and I chose the bullet. That was my learning experience. So yeah.
Yeah, Raul, what's been your experience with that kind of situation?
Yeah, sorry for being late. First of all,
First,
appreciate you guys waiting up on me. Yeah, it's funny you say that, man. I've actually run into that a few times, more than a few times. But this is the example I'm going to use is that I've had guys that, like Doug, um, don't have a substance abuse problem, but have a mental health problem, and we're trying to get them, admitted into a center, and they're like, "Well, don't you drink? You know, don't you feel like having a drink? And doing and giving you a big eye, and I'm kind, and so, and the contradiction is here, right? You're trying to get this person better. You're trying to bring truth out. You're trying to bring their truth out, and the first thing you do is tell them to lie, so they can go get some help. And you know, and of course now you got this first responder looking at you like, in order for me to get help, I've got to lie to you.
yeah,
How did that? Where did that leave you? You know what I mean?
That, especially coming from a law enforcement background where it is forbidden across all
Yeah,
spectrums to ever
yeah,
tell a lie. It's embedded in us. You lie, you get fired, you get decertified, you lose your credibility, and
that's
and,
it.
and that's it. I don't mean to cut you off, Raul, but
No,
that's exactly what happened when they called me into my chief's office that day. I really wasn't going willingly. And I was like, yeah, y'all ain't gonna make me go. And the dude that brokered me, he was a patient broker. The dude who brokered me, I'll never forget the conversation. He was like asking me questions, and I'm sure it was some sort of, they have a term for it, an assessment. I think it's called an assessment. And he said to me, he goes, "Do you feel like drinking?" I'm like, "No." Like at the time, I was trying to win another world championship.
right.
And I was like, "No, I don't." He goes, "You mean to tell me like you don't ever feel like just having a drink?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sometimes I like to have a drink." I thought it was a freaking conversation. Of course, yeah, I like to have a drink. He goes, "Oh, hold on a second. Let me talk to your chief." And then I handed the phone to the chief, and they were like, "All right, he's going." And it was kind of like a reverse Baker Act or 5150. They were like, tricked me into it. But, that's,
so I deal a lot with our veteran side of the house,
Hmm.
and on certain occasions, I'm trying to get folks into treatment, and this kind of happens all over the place. But I was working at a place a while ago, and the financial aspect of, and this is why people hate treatment facilities, is because they look at it as this is a moneymaker, capitalizing on hurt people, right? And so what that looks like is, the average cost of a first responder is this level. But for veterans, it's the financial support is a lot higher, right? So when I was working with veterans, if I spoke to 10 veterans, 9, maybe I would say maybe 1 out of the 10 would need inpatient. The rest would really be best served by seeing a local master's level, either clinician or or an outpatient program, or just something to help them kind of work through what they're working through and find a better place. And then somebody comes to me and goes, well, because I had a veteran that I wasn't going to put into treatment, and they said, well, do they take medicine? I said, yeah, of course they take medicine. Yeah, they've been banged up pretty bad, on a deployment. And they're like, well, are they taking it properly? And the question, why they asked it that way was that was a mechanism to allow somebody to come into treatment under the auspice of it's a substance primary issue, which when you start doing that, it undermines everything. The problem is it undermines all the programs that are doing really good that don't do that. But the reason they're doing that is because they'll generate a significant amount of money doing it. So is money a priority for private institutions? Of course it is. You need to make money to support a program because you have to have the best clinicians. You have to have competent clinicians, right? You have to have a good facility. And these things aren't free. So I don't look at it as like we're not supposed to make money. I get that. You're supposed to make money. But the priorities are a little bit different. I'll give you a prime example. Somebody recently needed some help. And so they weren't a fit for the program that myself, Doug, and Raul work for. And which, cool, but not a problem. If you come to me and you're like, I got a problem, and the organization that I work for can't help you, if After Action can't help you for a myriad of reasons, and whether it be logistical, financial, whatever it is, if we can't help you, I don't just, sorry, Raul, can't help you. Good luck with whatever it is you're struggling. So I reached out to our leadership in our program and said, hey, I have somebody, first responder, that needs help. They can't come to us. And they were like, within seconds, they're like, call this person, reached out to other facilities that can accommodate this individual, right? So we get done with that whole process. And so one of the folks that I was working with that was with an agency helping one of their people goes, wait a minute, I don't understand. They're not going to your facility? I said, no, they can't go for whatever reason. So you help them get to another facility? I said, yeah. That's what we're about. And that spoke, and I wasn't even thinking about it, but that spoke volumes to that agency's, coordinator, that it's not about us. If we can't make anything off of you, we're done with you. So I think there needs to be a modicum of altruism. And I will tell you, hands down, and I challenge anybody to prove otherwise, myself, Doug, and Raul, we pride ourselves on what we care about the most above everything is that first responder. I don't give a shit about anything else. I don't care about policies. I don't care about, I'm not going to get somebody into treatment. I don't care about that. We care about getting help because we were all there. We were all the people that needed help. And to be kind of tossed around like a pawn is something different. So when I look at facilities or what makes it credible, sure, the money aspect is there, and helping people helps us financially help other people. It's like almost like a to a certain degree, like a nonprofit. Nonprofits are great. I work with a great one, Making Everything Good, and they help get people to facilities. Right? I've reached out to them for people that weren't coming to our place, to everywhere. Right? They can't continue to support unless they get donations or they do fundraisers and stuff like that. That's the nonprofit side of the house, but that doesn't exist unless it gets supported financially. The same thing with residential or inpatient treatment. We don't exist without financial backing, whatever that looks like, right? So I think it's important that it's credible in the sense that we want to help. If we can't, let's get you some help. Let's just not cut you off. And then it brings us to another aspect of it. And this is why I think it's kind of important. A lot of places treat from the neck up. In other words, substance issues, mental health from the neck up, which is fine. It's a great model, works for the most part. However, first responders have become conditioned through the stressors of work, the politics of work, the just institutional type betrayals, or all these different things, and our bodies aren't regulated. And I use myself as an example. When I went to get treatment, I met with a psychologist, and the psychologist is like, Chris, I can't even begin to treat you because you are not at all stable. Like your body is in such a heightened state. I need to regulate that so that you're able to receive the treatment or the sessions. So I was at a significant state where I needed to be medicated because I was operating at like 1,000, and I needed to get down to like 10, right? So, and again, the medicine that I took wasn't that's your life now. It was a stabilization aspect. So to bring me down. So I say that because in order to be first responder savvy or applicable to first responders, you have to address that maybe I might not be at the point where I can get the help because my body's still reacting. So one of the things that we do over at After Action, which, and again, I'll always promote because it's a game changer, is our sensory room that works in tandem with it. So let's regulate the body from the neck down so that we can help from the neck up. So if you're looking at programs or you're looking at different facilities and stuff like, and we're not, again, I don't know too many that are doing that to the degree that we are, but there are places out there like that. So that's something I'd look into. Like, if we're going to help, can you help should be one of the first questions, right? So if you can't, if I can just if I can put a Band-Aid on the bullet hole, that really doesn't do anything. Let's get the body set so that we put it in a great position to heal on its own. And that's the other thing. And I'll let Raul and Doug talk to this a little bit more. Recovery facilities, treatment facilities, inpatient, residential does not fix the problem. 30 days, 45 days, 120 days does not undo 20, 30, 40 years of operating in certain conditions, right? Or just kind of almost Pavlovian, kind of like, this is what happens, this is how I react. What it does is it points you in the right direction. It gets you to a point where you're able to start getting healthy and maintaining that health on your own, or with some of the support systems and tools that you've kind of generated in going into treatment. What do you guys think?
I agree. I agree. It has to be a whole body, a whole body system. And, I had a doctor tell me a long time ago, because I had a hard time understanding and accepting the process. And I had a hard time accepting the fact that my brain was broken, because I had always had myself I held myself to such a high standard, just myself, that how could this happen to me? I have this title, this role. Guys like me aren't supposed to have this. And the doctor explained to me, he said, Doug, he said, this mental health thing is like cancer. And this was about going away to treatment as well. He said, if you have cancer, the first thing you do, doctor's going to tell you have cancer, you're going to get with your family, you're going to rally up the troops. They're all going to support you. And then you and the doctors are going to come up with usually the ultimate plan. And that is something radical like radiation, chemo, surgery. And then he said, after the surgery, then you go into what's considered aftercare. You're always going to have to take care of yourself, do regular visits. We all know this because, we have it in our family. And so I was able to understand that. And it was like treatment. He says, you're going to go away to a treatment center. That's like the hospital. They're going to operate. They're going to do some heavy work on you. And then you're going to come out. And when you come out, you're going to have to continually stay into wellness for yourself, eating better, taking care of yourself, regular visits with therapists and doctors. And so I was able to accept it with that example. And what that meant is it is a complete package, because I went to treatment, and when I came home from treatment, I was more fucked up than when I went in from the treatment experience. So I had like a whole nother year or two journey to continue in the care. And as you guys know, I mean, I've been at it. I went to treatment, I think, in 13 or 15, somewhere in that window,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm still in care. It's just something that I've had to accept that the rest of my life I'm going to have to stay in some sort of wellness, some sort of care. Because, people will ask you, how you doing? Well, I'm 50-50. Some days I'm good, some days I'm not. So it is a continuous care, if that explains it from my vantage point.
I was just gonna say, just backing up a little bit when it comes to credibility, uh, and when you're looking at treatment centers and programs, I think it starts with guys like us. Of course, a person is in crisis or just needing help, and they come to us looking for, help. And I think a big part is what Chris just said. We approach people or we deal with people right there. What do we need to do to get you help? And it's just that simple. And hopefully, we have something, in our organization, in our programming that can help you. But if not, we keep going. And that's the beauty, I think, of what we have done. This team right here and the team are Trauma Behind the Badge team and Survive First and Meg, and we have built a network around the country that we can bring to bear, that we can utilize to make sure that people get help. So that, I think, is what lends credibility to what we do. Is that we're not stopping at, like you said, we're not stopping at, oh, well, we can't help you, so then, good luck and, go forth. And no, we don't do that. And because we don't promise that, because we deal people with that kind of honesty and that kind of compassion, I think that goes a long way to people saying, hey, well, at least what they're saying, I can believe what's coming out their mouth. So if they do happen to come to After Action, or the next person that needs help, they'll send them to us because they know that we're going to give an honest answer. And we do what we say we can do. And if we don't have the answer, we will continue to help you to find the answer or find the path. However, whatever you want to word that, find the path you need to go down to get you the help you need. So that, I think, lends to credibility when that first interaction happens with a program. Are they getting, smoke blown up their ass, or is it the real deal and they're really trying to help? Because we the three of us know of the first thing happening. Guys just promising the world, and when you come out of here, you're going to be living in utopia with the unicorns and the rainbows, and that's just not the case. And it's not the case, and like Doug is saying, we're going to make sure that you understand that this is going to be a lifestyle change. This is going to be forever. The bad days tomorrow, right? It could be next year, but the bad days coming. But we're going to give you some skills.
Yeah, we just, to speak to what Raul just said, amongst us, myself, Doug, and Raul, I had somebody reach out to me for a friend that's in another state that needed some support outside of mental health or substance issue. It was completely separate. And I was like, well, I don't know. I said, but let me reach out to Doug and Raul. And I think maybe 4 seconds later, you sent me a call this person. So I think that's the beauty of it. We're force multipliers. So I don't know everything. Doug doesn't, Raul doesn't, but together I tell you what, and I'm pretty proud of the connections we've made with, and again, we speak all over the world, all over the country. There is always something that I could be like, let me ask Doug, because I think Doug just went here or did that. So I think somebody we were dealing with was asking about, hey, listen, I think they're trying to get healthy, and they're like, hey, listen, I'm trying to get into, competing in like an Ironman or triathlon. And I was like, I sure shit ain't gonna help you with that, right? I said, but you know what? I think I have a buddy that does know something. So I talked to Doug. I was like, hey, Doug, and then it was brought up,
right?
And they were put in contact. So I think that's That's like ultimately what it. So to that, we don't just. A lot of people, we look at things in a couple different ways. When they're coming in, while they're with us or in a facility, and then what happens afterwards. Because like Doug said and Raul said, a lot of the work is done post-treatment. So setting up a good plan is effective. But what really, and again, these are all these different pieces that make it work. And I think this is, and Raul talked this, I know Doug is very much understands this, is that if you just help the first responder, take the agency out, take all the others, if you're just helping the first responder, you're missing the bar. If you're not also incorporating their family, their spouses, partners, husbands, their friends, if they're not part of the initiation of this support from this, normally it happens in a moment of crisis, right? Yet something happens, like we get the call, like I just got a DUI, or I just got into a fight with my old lady and my old man, and I'm in jail, or I'm getting administratively kind of jammed up, or whatever it is. What does that look like? And even to touch more on what Raul said, we're not going to sugarcoat it. If you've done something that's going to wind you getting fired from the job, I'm not going to try to get you into treatment or a residential program to save your job. That's because then I'm just doing you a disservice. Let's get you better or get you on the right path so that we can figure out the next steps. And those steps may include you not having a job anymore. Or let's work together because you have kids in common with your spouse, and that is it's gotten to the point where it's completely dissolved. That there's not a be all end all. How can you guys operate as co-parents or people that share a family, healthy, not together maybe, but healthier, right? So I think it's important, and trust is gained by the outcome of what we do. And I've never. If Raul said he was going to do something, or Doug said, "Hey, listen, I'm going to do this," it's done. Like there is no question. It just I can bank on that. And we come from a field where I can't watch 360 or 720 up, down, back and forth. I rely on the guy and girl next to me, or behind me, or in front of me. As long as I know they're doing what they need to do, I can focus on my area of responsibility with some pretty good assurities that if something does go sideways, Doug or Raul got my 6 or my 12, right? Like that's goes without saying. And so it just, if you're not a first responder program, if they are not focusing on the family side of this, they have just, and I use this this analogy all the time, take your hand and dip it in boiling oil and just treat the palm. Have you fixed your hand? No. You fix the palm. Palm's a lot better, but the other side of the hand is all kind of jacked up. Still not going to be able to use the hand, right? Treat the whole person, the whole unit, the family support unit. That's really important. Now, I understand that right now the squeaky wheel is the individual in crisis. Let's focus on that primarily. But as we progress through treatment or through any kind of program dealing with first responders, that has to be a consideration. Mm-hmm. In addition to that, because not everything is, I'm going to get help, I don't have a job. A lot of the times, like 90% of the times, is I'm getting help and I'm going back to the job. Having a liaison with the facility, and we do a really good job at that, creating liaisons within the organizations that are sending folks to us. How can we make this transition going from treatment to work better? Like, what are the conditions? What do we, like, hey, listen, I'll use me, for example. Like me, go to treatment. Well, what does it look like when I go back to work? Well, I need to set up weekly therapy sessions. I need to do something having to do with substance, whatever that is. Let's set it up. And this is the beauty of it. If myself, Doug, or Raul come in contact with you and you go to treatment and you're doing great. But in a week, a month, 2 years down the road, you're like, oh man, I'm struggling. We get those calls all the time. I don't need to get into treatment again, or maybe I do, but sometimes it's the majority. It's, hey, I just need a little help, a little guidance. That's what we're here for. So a credible one is one that just doesn't stop when you leave. Mm-hmm. It doesn't stop once. And the other thing is, it doesn't stop once you get in. I've seen that a lot, where they're like, come on, we'll take care of you. And they get in, and then that's the last you ever hear from the person.
Let me ask you this, Chris, so you just bring up, I'm switching gears a little bit. Once you get in, and Doug, chime in here real quick. When first responders go to a treatment center, how important is this? Is the setting? Is the feel of what they step into? And I say that because we've touched a bunch, around the country, most of the major ones, and I've got my own opinion. But how important is what it feels like when you get there? How important is that? Whoever wants to jump on that first.
I would say it's vital.
Mm.
It's vital. I mean, you know, you're not going to go to a doctor's office that's, got no windows or doors on it, right?
Right.
You're sitting there going, where am I at? It's very uncomfortable. It's scary. It's nerve wracking. You've just been removed from your lifestyle, your home, your whatever environment, and now you're essentially, and this really sits hard for law enforcement specifically, you're almost being incarcerated.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I felt very incarcerated. I am being told I cannot leave this building for 30 to 45 days. I'm not allowed to have a phone. I'm like all this stuff. So it's very nerve wracking to experience that. And then, I got to live here and I've got to be comfortable. So that atmosphere, if you're so busy focusing on your atmosphere and your surroundings, especially that guys like us that come with our background, you're obviously not going to be focusing on your mental health and your wellness. You're going to be like, I was with 30 heroin addicts. So I spent the first week looking over my shoulder going, which one of these dudes is going to shank the drug agent? Because they all knew who I was and I knew who they were. Fortunately for me, it was a great experience with the 30 guys that I lived with. They're wonderful. But that is important, is that environment. My environment was disgusting. My treatment center was between a Domino's and a Kava bar in a strip mall. So like, and not that I'm bougie, but I'm kind of bougie, man. I've made a live for myself, and so I'm hanging out in a strip mall, driving on a paddy wagon to go to NA meetings and AA meetings every day, and it was just a really rough environment. So it is critical that that part is important.
Yeah.
Chris.
So I had I had a couple different experiences where I went. One of the ones I went to was strictly first responders. So it's kind of going. I went to a place where I met. It's how it felt. I was staying with relatives that I had never met before. If that makes any sense. Now, and by the way, some of my relatives are insane, and some are cool, and some and just in between everything. So that's the difference, right? So, and I also remember going to treatment for the first time. I looked to somebody that I met, and I was like, "Hey, man, this feels like boot camp. Not like structure, the physicality, or anything. The unknown
Right.
of what am I stepping into? Imagine just living your life, albeit not healthy or whatever, and you kind of become accustomed to, sleeping in your bed and stuff. Now you're in a strange place with a bunch of other people that are also in a strange place. And it's just a very awkward kind of vibe or environment. And I think it's important. And again, just to answer your question quickly, Raul, it is 100% important that the initial going in is made as nicely, and I say nicely in the sense that this is what's going to happen, this is where we are, that just kind of educating people on what's happening, and part of that is kind of giving them a brief outline. First responders work better when we
just going to get into that, the outline of you kind of knowing what you're stepping into a little bit, right?
I just messed up, or I just asked for help. Now I just came to a place where I'm getting checked, because there's also, when you go into places, there's a clinical screening, like what's going on with me, am I healthy, did I lie about what I was using, how I was taking, all this good stuff, right? And kind of figuring it out so it's a healthy or clinically sound environment. But I also need, and I don't need an in-depth explanation. And the reason I say that is because when people get to treatment, they're either still high or drunk, right? So, but let's get the basics. This is what's going to happen. The number or the number one question I always get asked from anybody that's going in to treatment, and you guys tell me if you've gotten a different one. Can I use my phone?
Yeah.
Like, you're important. I get that. You're very important. How about we take just a second to breathe? And so I want the people who have never been into treatment or never gone, or who are responsible for sending somebody to treatment. Have you ever forgotten your phone at home when you went to work and you're like, oh my God, my date? Now imagine being put in that position for a lot longer than an hour, right? Not that you can't use your phone, because we understand, and we work with, again, folks that are in the middle of a legal situation where they have to have contacts with either their attorney or the court system, or they have cases pending that they were an arresting officer or something. So obviously, and the big thing is, followed by the phone, is I need to pay bills, or I need to access my phone and I pay my bills on the phone a lot too. So again, it's important for people to understand, there's a lot of stress in just going to the new place.
Mm-hmm.
What am I doing here? What does this look like? And do I have access to the outside world so I don't feel like I'm in Shawshank, right? So like, I feel like I have some modicum of control.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, go ahead, Raul. I know you wanted to touch on the outlines.
Yeah, so you kind of hit on it. The outline is a big deal. Like, at After Action and some of the better programs, that's the first thing they're going to get. They're going to give you an outline, a synopsis of what the process is going to be. So
even what's a pack.
Yeah, even what's a pack, exactly. So down to even what's a pack and what you don't need. So and the big deal there, and you brought the phone thing up. I was going to touch on that. And Doug said this. You're not going to prison, right? You will have access to the outside world. You will have access to your phone, limited in the beginning, and then more so as time goes on. But another big thing I wanted to touch on was, and again, there are different type of treatment centers, and there's a bunch around the country, but some of them feel like you're going into some type of institution, yeah. It feels like you're going into a cuckoo's nest, and I say that respectfully, into a hospital, where I think, yeah, and so ours is, I believe, much more inviting,
like a home.
It's a more of a homey feel, and when you step in, you're stepping into a living room of a house, So and again, you've got an outline of what it's going to look like. So you're stepping in, and then that thing kind of just begins, and that, I think, is huge into making our first responders a little bit more reducing the stress. I don't want to say it's making more, reducing the stress of the process.
Nobody's skipping into treatment.
No.
And I got carried in. I got carried in by my chief and my partner, man. They were going to beat me up. But
and so let me and just to move along, man, really quick. What do you think is the difference between first responders staying engaged in the program versus just shutting down?
So I just had this conversation with somebody who was going into treatment, and I said, here's the deal. You want to get help. You want to be better. I get that. There is no facility on this planet. There is no doctor. There is no psychiatrist. There's no psychologist that you can just sit in their room and you be psychologized back into health. You have to be proactive in your own treatment. You have to. And this is one of the examples that I use for somebody who, and again, this is part of reminding people. Years ago, I first started seeing this, was somebody would come into a facility or a residential program, and they're like, this isn't working for me. I said, well, what's not working? Well, I haven't been able to sleep. I said, okay.
Right.
Did you talk to anybody about, like, hey, is it the arrangements? Is it a medication thing? Is it what's going on? Well, I didn't say anything. I said, okay, if you're having problems, tell somebody. That's what the staff is here for. They don't know. They're like, meh, I know what you're doing. And this is what this is my biggest frustration. And I share this with people going into residential programs is my fear is you're going to think that they're just going to zoom good thoughts in your brain and you'll be fine. And you figure that out a week or two before you leave. And you're like, shit, I should have been doing this a long, long time ago. Again, when you go in, when folks are going in there, it's actually probably the first time he or she's ever been able to focus 100% on themselves. Because we all have like, spouse, kids, work. I got all this stuff. It's a great hard reset of like, all right, let's get me straight so I can go. The other thing to speak to just attending or actually going through a program, for a first responder program to be credible, there needs to be a mechanism or a structure where when you're first coming in, it's really scary. And by the way, treatment facilities don't work where everybody goes in at the same time. You'll have people that have been there for a month or two, or people that have been there a week more than you, and then you're just getting in there. So what happens is, because, and I say it again ad nauseum, first responders and vets don't want to be fixed. They want to be given the tools to fix themselves. We're also very service driven. We're also very, I care about my people. So initially when they come in, when I came in with Doug, it's one of these like, a little overwhelmed, got a lot of stuff going on, a lot of shame, everything's going on. Somebody within that program who's been there a couple weeks or a couple days ahead of me, hey brother, hey sister, here's where we're at. This is what I went through. You need something. That when that person initially goes through that, it's their kind of responsibility to look after the new folks that are coming in behind them. It gives them one of the most powerful things you can give a first responder: purpose. Purpose. And that first responder coming in that's scared or anxious sees that other person who's a lot less anxious and calm. That gives them hope. So you're giving purpose, you're giving hope. That's a great structure. And if I was looking at a facility or looking at an organization or a recovery treatment program, that's what I would ask. Hey, what does that look like mechanically? Like somebody comes in, who helps them out? They're always going to have access to clinicians. They're always going to have access to whatever kind of modality they're working with, whether it be sensory, whether it be EMDR, CBT, all that stuff, right? But it's important to have that structure. The difference, and a lot of folks that I've worked with, one in particular that kind of comes to mind, needed a couple times to go to treatment, various treatment facilities. And I remember this person telling me like a week into like their third or fourth different treatment facility. He's like, Chris, I get it. I was like, what do you mean? He goes, I get it now. I was like, okay. Again, I was just kind of like, I guess he gets, I don't know what he gets. And then a week after they call me back and they're like, these programs work, but they only started working because I got involved in them. Mm-hmm. Because I visited a lot of treatment centers, right? Mm-hmm. And it wasn't necessarily that the treatment center was bad. It's that he or she wasn't in the place to kind of receive it yet. Right. And it was kind of like one of the Doug things. They're like, you're going, mm-hmm. Whether you want to or not, we'd like you to go voluntarily. So I think to what you were talking about is the difference between just going and being able to kind of navigate it in a healthy and a productive way is being proactive. And those treatment facilities, the credible first responder facilities, are the ones that incorporate, and they understand what I'm walking into. They understand how I feel and what are the obstacles. Like I don't trust anybody. This is a punishment, and it's really not. And once they start getting that, the sooner he or she starts buying into like, all right, this is what I need to do. And I said this, a lot in talking to everybody. I got to the point where I was sick and tired of being sick and tired. So if you told me, Chris, what you need to do is I need you to roller skate and juggle chickens, and that'll make you better. Well, I was to the point where I was like, I will be a roller skating chicken juggling motherfucker. I will get my shit together, because I was at that time where I wanted to do. I just got sick and tired of being sick and tired. So I did the work, and here's the crazy thing: when you do the work, it works.
I think that and most of the treatment centers and people that are involved with them, when I talk to them, most of them tell me that it takes everybody, on average, of course,
Yeah.
a couple of weeks before the light bulb kind of, oh shit, I see where we're going. I see what's happening. I can see the direction we're going in, right? But a couple of weeks go by. And it's a big deal, right? Because that's the difference between shutting down and getting involved, right? And the other big thing is, and you already talked about it, you're gonna get the clinicians, and I think most have culturally competent clinicians, and you're gonna get the modalities out there. That's great. I think that the time frame, I'm going to harp on that a little bit more, so kind of pumping up after action. We're a little bit different because we do a little bit more work. We do it in a more intense pace. We're kind of taking away some of the downtime and making you do some stuff. Hopefully, we're cutting that 2 week feel out time down to a week, and down to a week and a half, because I promise you, 3 or 4 days are a big difference. A week is a huge difference.
Yeah, no, I 100%. The other aspect that makes us a little bit, and again, I'd speak generally about a lot of residential programs, but kind of coming back to it, I think what I like about ours is, again, we minimize the amount of feeling it out time. The other great aspect of it is, and this is really, we could start taking a lot more, but it's a smaller group. So I tell people it's the difference between a private school and a public school. So a private school, you're going to have a little bit more interaction and more accessibility to the resources out there. Not that you can't learn from a public school, not that they're bad. I'm a product of public school. Well, I don't know if that's a awesome endorsement for public school.
Don't bring that up anymore. You don't tell anybody.
But there's some places where you can kind of get lost in the sauce, where there's 50, 60 people in a program. And again, not that that's bad, but for first responders, having that small, like I've seen places where somebody didn't talk to their clinician for a week. That's insanity. That's insanity, right?
Once a week.
Yes.
I spoke to my client. I saw a clinician once a week.
Yeah.
It's just.
That's the thing, Chris, and just to get ready to come back. But that's the standard.
Yeah,
that's the standard around the country, is seeing a clinician once a week. And we blow that out the water. Go ahead, sir. I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead.
And right on point with that. So, and also, I don't want to put everything on the clinical side of it, which it's an important part. But what I think is great, and when you're looking at programs, what else is available? Like because the staff, and I'll tell you, go to any hospital with the greatest surgeons in the world. Who runs that hospital? The nurses and the staff at that hospital. They have boots on the ground, right? They're the ones that are interacting with the folks that are in the house daily. So they see the little idiosyncrasies, the subtle changes in personality or in engagement. So it's not just the clinicians, but also having a receptive and responsive staff, and it gets broken down. So it's not just the clinical work, whether it be cognitive behavioral therapy or the didactic experience, but also the sensory stuff. So there's multiple things in a smaller group. So you could be a part of this large group, right? That has one resource where everybody's waiting in line to do that. Or you can be in a smaller group, a more intensified group, where when you need it, you can use it. So like an as needed kind of resource becomes more accessible. And the other thing which I think gets kind of diminished in a lot of places, which is highly significant, is what does nutritional health look like? So treating the first responder, like, again, all the trauma, the stuff that they've seen or exposed or experienced, but also what does that look like to become healthy down the road? And not just, hey, Raul, eat better. No, we're gonna show you. So first responder programs that help alter the lifestyle that you've been used to, but they're like, I got it. I know what to. No, if you had it, you wouldn't be here. You wouldn't be in this position.
Right.
So And again, I'm not saying you have to do everything we tell you to on the post end of things or post care or the aftercare,
But you can
right?
do better. Yeah.
But maybe start picking out, oh, you know what, this works for me. There's folks in a million years that have gone to our place that don't never did journaling, and now they journal incessantly, which is great, right? Works for them, right?
Mhm.
There's folks that like I never did yoga, but now I do yoga, and so these little incremental changes down the road become these huge lifestyle shifts in a good direction. So to what kind of speaking to kind of coming back a little bit, it's first responders need to have some sort of investment into what he or she is doing and how they progress. Having somebody appear that's going through treatment help them out, and then them being in a position to help the new person out, but also being in an environment that's intense where there's not a lot of like, hey, you're just going to sit in the corner and kind of sulk for a week or two. Now you're going to stay busy, you're going to keep focused. Also, let's bring in the family. So you have the family component, you have the obstacles that we're identifying as people coming in, the waiting 2 weeks or 3 weeks before they're like, oh, I get the light. We drop that down. Also, what does it look like going back to my agency? Is there a liaison? The other big thing is confidentiality or privilege. Like, what am I sharing with your agency? And again, we don't share or include anybody that, again, it's not without a written or an acknowledged release, right? But if we had that, how can we make that transition from treatment to work better? And how do we make that transition? And here's the big part, from residential program to the marriage or the relationship.
It's a home.
Because there's all these moving parts. And just to really highlight one other thing that for me is a game changer, and I've not seen it anywhere, is we've constantly waited for people to really, like we all talk about, wait for the wheels to fall off.
Mm-hmm.
What if there was a mechanism to put in place where it's not an in-depth, comprehensive 30-day treatment, 45-day treatment plan, but 2 weeks?
Mm-hmm.
That is a game. So that's the investment that we're talking about, which really doesn't cost the agency anything other than just some time off, right? That instead of waiting to have somebody go into treatment for 30, 45 days, 120, whatever that looks like, something significant happens at work. We're starting to identify this is the downhill slope. We just crested that roller coaster and we're getting ready to go down. Instead of letting them go all the way down, we can navigate them so they come out of that a little bit quicker. So our 2-week reset program, game changer. I love that, and I promote that. Like,
yeah, it is a game changer. Last question here, Doug. I'm put it to you, man. Lastly, what do you think agencies need to know when they're referring to people? Like what's the most important thing they need to know or understand before referring somebody to a treatment center? It's a
Well,
tough one. It's a tough one.
yeah,
There's so much shit, but
gotta take my glasses off for that one. One of the things they need to understand is how it works. Clearly, step one, how it works. One thing that they can't do is do not, if you don't know and you're unfamiliar with where you want to send your employee or your brother or sister, call somebody. That's what my chief did. He called somebody from the FBI National Academy. He had a lot of respect for that background. Let me call them and see what they say. Obviously, FOP. They've gone through great measures to do a vetting process. There's organizations like that. But I would say what not to do is don't pick a place because they got one of them stupid ass wood flags on their living room floor with a blue line through it. That doesn't qualify them. Don't pick a place because they paid to be a sponsor of the local conference. Don't pick a place because they flew you to Florida and put you on a fishing boat and a charter boat. That's not the answer for it. Here's an easy look for a place that has a law enforcement, and I'm speaking law enforcement, fire, law enforcement liaison, a first responder liaison, like we are, where they could call that person and go, hey, can you fill me in? We have this person that's needing this type of care. So it's one of those things, if you don't know, do the research, because we as in law enforcement, we spend a lot of money in training our officers and and investing into our employees, you need to put the same effort into this and into their wellness, because you're going to get out of it what you put into it. If you send your employee to a shithole, you're going to get an employee that comes back smelling like shit.
Yeah.
It's a simple metaphor.
Yes, sir.
You know, look for those things, take the time and put the effort in for the quality of care. I before we wrap up, I want to add this for the person that might be listening that's considering to go to treatment or might cross that path or know somebody. I always like to tell guys in our career, especially the three of us, we've trained with all the biggest and baddest dudes on the planet. And that's great. We've spent so much time. If you're a firefighter, you're going to spend time training days on how to do a blood pressure cuff, how to do tourniquet, how to do all these things. For us, it was operational stuff, from shooting to fighting to intel to all this stuff. In my entire career, I never took a class on how to use my brain and how to take better care of myself. So I'm a big advocate for put as much effort into your mind and your body and your soul as you do your hands. Like, you know, Raul, you hear me say it. I can shoot a gnat's ass off from a mile away. I've got all the training and the years of training, but I could not figure out how to make myself happier.
Yeah, that's
And
huge.
if I would have had that class, right? If I would have put as much effort into my mind as I did, you know, physical body and my training. So what I say all that to say this, as Chris would say, just look at this as training. If you're a SWAT operator, let's look at it as a highly advanced training class. And it kind of takes that little stigma away of, oh, like me, I use that term, I had to go away to a cuckoo house. It kind of takes that little stigma away. And hey, I'm going away to do some training. What kind of training you doing? Training on how to take better care of myself. Because it will lead to the end of your journey, like it is for the three of us. We all crossed the finish line of being police officers. Now that I've crossed the finish line, I have this whole fourth quarter of my life to live. And the only person I have to live it with is myself and what I've done for myself and how I take care of myself. So put that effort into yourself so that, once again, you can be the best version of yourself and cross that ultimate finish line of life.
Awesome. So listen, guys, we've talked at length. Like I said, this should be a week-long kind of workshop. But I do want to mention this. If there's something that you're interested or some questions that you have, please go ahead and send it to us. We're going to give you our information here in just a second. I also want to kind of put this out there. If we put out, and we'll post something on the social media side for both of us. I think Doug just put one out. We created what's called the pathways, and it really does break it down because we got a lot of questions of what it looks like to get help, what it looks like asking for help, getting help, during help, and after help. So we put that out, how to do it in 2 different pathways confidentially where your agency isn't kind of involved. And then also as for frontline supervisors, if the frontline supervisor or the agency is involved. Just the logistics of what that looks like and what you're going to need. So we're going to put that out. Don't hesitate to check it out. If you don't get it, you can't find it, our information's there. Raul, you got anything?
I'm good, man. Thanks for having me.
Guys, thanks for listening and tuning in. Anything we could do, if you or somebody you know is struggling, you don't know what to do or who to call, please call us. You guys have a good one. Be safe.